their legislative.
Yeah. I want to introduce you to a new friend of mine. You know, it's really funny. A few years ago, when I started down this journey, I found God. He found me. Well, he had like a sniper rifle on me my whole life. I kept moving, and finally he got my attention, and I went to all kinds of different churches, and I heard all kinds of people. I remember I spoke to or my wife and I went to this church where there was a pastor who was an atheist, and I didn't even know those existed. And it was only during the sermon halfway through where he said, you know that I don't believe in God, but if there is a God, we should serve him. And I thought, I didn't know that should be in the program someplace. I think that should be someplace. Hey, by the way, we're the church with the atheist as the minister. It was just bizarre. And I have gotten to know a lot of really good people of faith. And I've also met a few, I think, people that are really misguided. But one of the reasons I came down here to Texas, I think I'm beginning to find out, is because the people here are plain spoken and they are honest. And when somebody offers help, they actually mean it. It's not like, in New York, you're like, hey, can I help you with that? And they're like, yeah, sure. And you're like, oh, crap, I didn't mean it. They really mean it. Good, decent people. This Saturday, I went to a church, Gateway Church. I've gone there a couple of times. I go to my church on Sunday, and ours is 3 hours long. It's not exactly a song and dance church. It's not something that you're like, hey, wow, that was cool. But I get a lot out of it every Sunday, and I'm strong in my faith. But I am so trying to get my kids to celebrate God in all ways, and get my kids to be able to see people of other faiths worship in a different way and find God everywhere they go. So I went to this church called Gateway Church, where a friend of mine, I hope I can call you my friend, a friend of mine, Robert Morris, is the senior pastor. This is an amazing church. Now, he is a guy who authored this book, The Blessed Life, and I will tell you that the first time we met, somebody handed me this book, and I didn't get a chance to read it at the time because a guy who is on the show, Jeff Fisher, was on the plane with me, and he grabbed onto it, and he never let it go. And Jeffy doesn't read this kind of stuff, and he kept quoting it to me. It is the simple secret of achieving guaranteed financial results. Well, that sounds pretty amazing, and doesn't sound really godlike, does it? I contend it is. God's building a mansion for you, not a hovel. Why would you have a mansion up there and a hovel down here? Why would he want you to live in poverty? Welcome. How are you, Pastor?
I'm glad to be here.
I tell you, I went
Very
to.
much so.
I told you on Saturday. I said, my family and I will probably be coming on Saturday afternoons before we go out to eat or something, because it's better than going and seeing a movie. It's you have an amazing church band. I love these. I love these mega churches with these church bands. They're so great. And your message, I've seen you now speak, I think 3 times. Each time is spot on. You're speaking clearly for people to hear in times where
Thank you.
Where they need to hear clearly.
Thank you.
Let's start with money, because we were talking about the government out of control right now.
Yeah.
We have a point in our life where people have to make a decision. Do I vote for the Middle East? Is that the most important thing? Do I vote for the economy? Is that the most important thing? Do I vote for social values? Is that the most important thing? Because they're all on fire now.
Yep.
Everything.
Yep.
How would you help us with that?
They are all important. Moral issues, social issues, spiritual issues. But what the Lord has been speaking to me, and I'm so concerned about our country, is the economic issues right now. Because my family can be in order. I can love my wife. I can love my children. I can raise my children to believe in God and understand the Bible. But if the government keeps spending the way they're spending, my children and my grandchildren are going to be in trouble. They're going to know God, but we're going to lose our country. And if we lose it economically, we're going to lose it spiritually as well. We're going to lose our impact in the world that we've had.
Do you think we've already lost it spiritually? Because I have to tell you, the Republican South Carolina is one. And I don't know where you are politically, and I don't care, and I don't want to put you in that awkward position. But, when you look at somebody's record, forget about their personal life, you look at somebody's record, you see a pattern, character traits. And so many people right now, and it's happening with multiple candidates, they will go against their principles because they think this guy can win. Mm-hmm. That is exactly what half the country did last time with Barack Obama.
Yeah. And the other thing they did was half of the believers in Jesus Christ, or Christians, didn't vote. So not only did many of them go against their principles because of a popular candidate, but then they also then just didn't show up at all, just didn't vote at all.
So make the case to me that we haven't already lost our spiritual way. I have to tell you, I believe in God. I believe in miracles. I believe that you are part of that. I mean, there's a group of pastors, priests, and rabbis right now that are a black robe regiment that are, I've heard you do it, where you are preaching from the pulpit what needs to be said. You're not telling anybody what to vote for, but you're preaching what needs to be said. I don't hear that. And I don't hear people getting engaged on a religious, except for social issues.
Yeah.
The whole thing is a religious issue. We're either a divine country or we're not, right?
Right. And what you said was, haven't we already lost our spiritual way? Yes, we have, no doubt. But can we get it back? Yes. See, I believe with all of my heart that you and others and people who are standing up for principles in God's Word right now, if we will stand up, if we will, then we can get it back.
Tell me, because there's a lot of people, I personally think, because I was like this for a long time, I'm the guy, and my wife, we still do it. We still do it. We'll be out, somebody will say something will be wrong, and you know it's wrong, and I or my wife will look at the other one and say, just don't say it, it'll cause you trouble. Yeah. Now, I'm doing it now. My excuse is because I'm Glenn Beck, and it'll only make it much worse, and then it'll just be really bad. I'm not a normal citizen anymore. But I think that's an excuse.
Yeah.
Most of us just don't say things because we just don't want to cause trouble.
Yeah.
So why should we?
Yeah.
Didn't it make it worse?
No, because it is the truth. And if I see someone headed toward a cliff, I've got to say something.
Could you did a sermon a few weeks back where you talked about if suddenly cliff driving.
Cliff driving.
Yes. Yeah. Will you tell that?
Yeah. There's cliff diving now, and of course you got to know how to do it and work your way up. And so, but I said, what if cliff driving becomes popular one day?
Right.
People will drive their car off a cliff. Does that mean that just because it's popular, I'm not going to say anything? Or does it mean that I'm going to use hate speech against the cliff drivers? No. I'm going to love them enough to tell them the truth. I'm also going to tell them the truth graciously, kindly. I'm not going to yell at them and barrage them with comments. I'm going to talk to them about, I want to talk to you about the end result of where you're going.
Right,
and
you're
I
going
think
over the
that's
cliff.
love that
It is.
addresses things like that.
But everything has been, really, we are in an upside-down, bizarro world. Mm-hmm. I never thought in my lifetime I would see the time where, where the two sides wouldn't even be able to recognize each other. I can't even understand their thinking, and they can't understand mine. Never thought we'd see that.
Yeah.
And here we are.
Yeah. And it is because we have been so indoctrinated. And when you go back, we took prayer out of the schools. We took God out of school. We took God out of the courthouse. We took God out of society. And basically we said the two don't need to meet. And then some people even quoted Scripture, render unto Caesar what is Caesar's and render unto God what is God's. Well, here's the problem. Here's the way they quote it: render under Caesar's what is Caesar's, or render under God what is God's. It's not true. It's both. You can do both. And if we are not involved in our government, and if we don't stand up and say what's right, why in the world would we elect some people and say, okay, y'all go make the laws, we'll live by them, but you just make the laws and do whatever you want to up there, and then not hold them accountable?
See, I think most people, and not all, I mean, we talked about this on Saturday privately, not all, in my faith and your faith, but most want to get along. I don't care how you worship. You know what I mean? Are you happy in your life? Have you found God? I may have my own opinion of, well, if I was micromanaging your life, I might do it this way. But I'm not micromanaging your life, and you're not managing mine. Are you a good, productive citizen that is doing good, and are you happy? If not, I have some happy, good news for you. Yeah. If you want to hear it, great. If you don't, that's fine. Yeah. But I don't. Your religion doesn't hurt me, and my religion doesn't hurt you. Most people are like that. Why is it we've been convinced that we're adversaries? The people who believe in God. You have a different theology than I do, but we both believe in God. We both know that the country is driving over a cliff. Why is it that we are still being put against each other? Yeah, who's doing that? What is happening?
Well, there is a greater enemy, and that is Satan. Satan is doing everything he can, because America was the greatest country in the world for sending missionaries, for proclaiming the truth of Jesus Christ. So Satan does everything he can to say, okay, Glenn's a Mormon, don't have anything to do with him. And this guy over here is a Catholic, don't have anything to do with him. And he does everything he can to separate us so that we won't stand up. That's correct. And then Satan is going to do everything he can to destroy.
How do we fight that? Because be real honest with you. I thought up until this last weekend that Mitt Romney was probably going to be the nominee, and I don't like a lot of his policies. I think he's a big government guy, and Mormons aren't real popular as it is, and I think whoever is going to be in that seat is in for real trouble. I don't want that. I don't want any more trouble. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And that bothers me. But so I'm not even for. I'm for Rick Santorum, a Catholic. Yeah. I'm for Rick Santorum.
Yeah.
I get so much heat on the radio. Well, you're really for him. No, I'm not. I'm for Santorum. What part of my I'm for Santorum is a implied endorsement for Romney?
Yeah.
How do we combat that? How do we put it behind us? Because it seems people just hear what they want to hear. Or is that this part of it? You move on.
I think some ways it's part of it, but we can't move on. We just cannot. We are in such a crisis right now that if we move on, it is in some ways what happened in Germany, where you've got people who are good, moral people who just said, let's move on and let's trust the government. And you can't do that, because we are being driven to slaughter right now if we don't come together and work.
What do you mean by that?
I mean, we're being driven to slaughter in all of our values. Our values are being taken away. Our belief in God is trying to be taken away. Our freedom of religion, not freedom from religion. And then again, our economy. I can't even imagine a person saying, okay, I make $50,000 a year, but I'm going to live on $70,000. And there will never be any consequences. My kids will never suffer. I'm just going to do it. It's just math. It's basic math. And I don't understand why Americans aren't standing up and demanding a revolution for our country to change, for our politicians to change. You know, can I say one? I just sat there thinking, if you and I lie to an elected official, that's a crime. But if an elected official lies to us, that's politics. And nearly every one of them have, because all of them say, I'm going to balance the budget. They all go in on that platform, Democrat, Republican, but none of them do. And they keep spending more than we take in, and they're telling us there won't be any consequences for it.
You think they'll be held eternally responsible for what's, I mean, I know you don't judge people, but I mean that's a pretty serious, you believe that this country is divinely inspired.
Yes, absolutely.
You believe we have a divine purpose still yet to be achieved?
Absolutely.
So if for those who, I kind of go back to Ezekiel, for those who can see it but don't cry warning out, is the blood of all those that could have heard on their hands?
Absolutely, but that's for all of us.
Right.
Every person
will
be held eternally responsible.
Right.
Every person.
Even if we fail by crying out,
right.
Even if nobody listens, we've done our part. I mean, it's not that you want to give up, but I mean, you've got to understand that you have to cry out. Yeah. Eternally responsible for destroying freedom.
Yeah.
Do you believe that if America fails, let me say this, you just tell me where you stand on this. I believe if America fails, Satan does not destroy, I mean, in the end he does, he perverts.
Yes.
And especially anything that is good. And we've already perverted our system. We've already turned it into something that's unrecognizable from what it was.
Yeah.
If this falls into the wrong hands, and we keep going down this road, we have the potential of being one of the most evil nations ever on planet Earth. Do you agree?
I do. And I believe that it will have dire consequences on the rest of the world if we don't stand up and do something right now. We are at a point of critical mass, of tipping. If believers, if people of faith, if people who believe in God don't stand up right now and hold them accountable, we're in trouble.
So what should they do right now? Because right now they're going to be offered choices that are very much the same. I don't know what happened to the Tea Party. I mean, all of a sudden the Tea Party is like missing, it seems.
Yeah.
What do people do? They say you get pretty tired, Pastor.
Yeah.
You get pretty tired.
Yeah.
What do they do?
I think they continue to do what many are doing, and that's living their life in a godly way. But the main thing is they've got to speak. They've got to get involved. They've got to do something. They can't just, believe in God and come home, hit the garage door opener, pull in the garage, close the door, and go in and turn the TV on, and then go to bed, go back to work, never say anything to their neighbor, never talk to anybody at work, never get involved in the political process, never vote.
What happens if they're alone? They a lot of people who listen to me will say, Glenn, you don't know. You don't know what it's like to be married to a spouse who thinks you're crazy. You're a conspiracy theorist for even watching you to think that the United States could be in dire straits. Oh, it'll never happen. They always work it out. All of that stuff. People in their own houses, the spouses. Yeah. What do they do there?
Yeah, we've got to do it. We cannot get this defeatist mentality.
Okay, so help me out, because I hear this all the time. My spouse vehemently disagrees. How do you navigate that? If you're the pastor, and I know you're speaking in generalities, but
well, let me go to 1 Peter talks about if a spouse has an unbelieving husband, even a wife has an unbelieving husband, that he will be won without a word when he observes her behavior. If that person, if their relationship with Jesus Christ makes them a better husband, a better wife, and that to me goes back to even if they have a political difference, if that husband is laying down his life for his wife, if he's loving her, if he's serving her, if he's kind and not dominating her, not ruling over her, but he's serving her and loving her, eventually she's going to say, I want to know the God that you're serving. And it goes back to that. It doesn't go back to our political views. It goes back to, are we really serving God
What if the person in your relationship is not?
Well, that's what 1 Peter says. Even if the person in your relationship is not. See, think about it. There are a lot of husbands that hate Jesus. They're jealous of him because their wife fell in love with him, the husband, and then she fell in love with Jesus, and now she wants to go to church all the time, and she doesn't want to do anything with him. Well, church and her relationship with Jesus should have made her a better wife. That's what Peter's actually talking about. So that then the husband says, if this is what Jesus has done for you, I want to meet Jesus.
Can I tell you something? That's exactly what happened with my in-laws. My father-in-law, they went to church. They're always churchgoers, Catholics, always gone to church, blah, blah, blah. They're good Christian people. And she said, I want more. I want more. And she's like, come on, come with me. He wouldn't. And he's like, oh, wait, that's fine. And she kept going. And she just kept getting involved. And finally, he told me this, that he went to the priest. He's like, okay, what's the deal? And the priest said, I don't know. What is the deal? And he realized, yeah, she is better, and I'm kind of the stick in the mud here. And
That's
you know,
it.
he
But I
fell
think
into
that's
line,
the
if
same
you will.
thing. Take that principle then in your neighborhood. If in your neighborhood you're serving and you're loving and you're kind and you're expressing the values that are in the Bible, maybe your neighbors then say, "What's the difference?"
Okay, can I have one more question on this line? Because that's really the deal that we're doing on restoring love. I think that's the key, that you have to be a visible example. You have to mean it.
Yeah.
You have to mean it, and be a loving, caring example. People will tell you, and because I've had it happen, they will tell you, that won't make a difference. We've got to mobilize, et cetera, et cetera. I think what I would call Bible bashing. You and I can quote scriptures, you can quote scriptures, we see things a different way. I'm not going to change you, you're not going to change me. And so what we do is we just get into the spirit of contention. The Spirit does not dwell there. You know what I mean?
Right, absolutely.
And that's what's happened to our country. We're political bashing each other over and over, and we're not going to change any minds. We have to change hearts.
Yes.
Right?
Absolutely. And Paul said it this way in 1 Corinthians 13, if I know all mysteries, but don't have love, I'm nothing. If I can do this, if I give my body to be burned for the poor, if I give all my goods away and don't have love, I am nothing. And so we do need to get involved, but we have to be involved with a spirit and a heart of love, and that will change people.
Right. Okay. Back in just a second. I want you to know this is not the 700 Club, and we have Rabbi Lappin coming in, who's going to do something that will absolutely blow your mind. But I am absolutely convinced that if people of faith don't stand together and we don't start saying the uncomfortable things and sitting through the uncomfortable things, the important things, we are not going to make it. Last week I had James Robison on with me, and James has become a good friend, and I know he's on your board or council, whatever, right?
Yep.
He's become a good friend, and I've now spoken to him for about the last 2 years, and I've watched him, and he's an honest man.
He is.
And really, truly sees the world as on the edge of peril. And if we don't stand together with each other, it's game over. Mm-hmm. Would you agree that it's game over within the next 4 years? I mean, this election, you hear this every time. Most important election of your lifetime. This one is.
Yeah.
Agree?
I agree completely.
Without naming names unless you want to, do you see somebody that you say, I think this is the person?
Well, I see some people that I want to support and I want to be behind. And I was wondering whether I should say this or not, because I don't know if I'll get quoted or not, you know. But in some ways, an election is the lesser of two evils. So when it comes down to it, that person may not be completely like Rick Santorum. I absolutely love Rick. He's a Catholic, but I love his values, his morals, you know, things like that. And
does his Catholicism bother you at all?
No, not at all. What I want to see is morality. I want to see a person who's a moral person and a person who believes in the principles our nation was founded on and will stand up for them. And again, I am very concerned as a citizen about our economy. I don't understand why more people are not. It's not money. It's not about money. It's about our existence.
Don't you think that we have been taught that Washington has told us everything we want to hear, that you can have it all. You can live an easier lifestyle, that they can take away all of your problems. They can educate your children, just drop them off at the bus stop. Mm-hmm. They'll take care of it. You don't even have to think. Mm-hmm. And we want to believe those things because it's easier for us. And so now to change that mindset, there's part of us that says, we are so screwed no matter what we do. You could elect everybody short of Jesus this next election, and we are going to go through massive pain because you have to pay for the sins.
You have to.
Right, okay.
Yeah, we have to.
Right. So it's easier at this point to say, for most people, you know what, it's just not going to fall apart. Would you agree?
It is easier, but it's not right. Okay. We're in trouble. You know, the book that you referred to that I wrote, The Blessed Life, is about giving to give, not giving to get. James Robinson that you talked about, and I spoke with James a few years ago and said, James, you've got to stand up and gather people together, people of faith, to do something about our nation because we're in trouble. And so I've been completely supportive of him as his pastor ever since he started, and he's doing a great job.
He is.
But the Blessed
Life...
Hang
on just a second. He's got the new book out coming in a couple of weeks. We had him
Indivisible.
On. And I heard him speak, and you tell me, because you've seen more pastors than I have, but I have not seen, the two of you, I have not seen people on the pulpit speak like the two of you, I think, in my entire life. And I've seen James for a long time, but there is a new power that is coming when it comes to what's happening in America. You guys are speaking with power and authority, and it is not about Democrats and Republicans. No, it's about principles.
It's about principles.
And it's amazing to watch. Amazing.
Well, as I was saying, the book is about God's blessings on us, but about the blessed life walks on two legs: generosity and stewardship, or living below our means. And I want to talk about stewardship for a minute, because the book is, again, it's not about giving to get, which is a lot of television preachers do. It is about giving to give. It's about the right motive.
I've heard, so would you agree with me? Because this bothers me when I hear a preacher say, if you give today, you're going to get X, Y, and Z back.
It's the wrong motive. It's the wrong motive.
But it's also, God blesses, this happens all the time with me. I'll get blessings that many times look like curses. And you're like, oh, you got to be kidding me. But in time, I realize that's the greatest blessing.
That's exactly
right. And God's not, he's not a banker. He doesn't, I think he doesn't care if we're rich or we're poor. He cares if we're happy and safe. Right?
Yes, and he wants us to be successful in every area of our life.
Correct.
Okay. But the other part of the blessed life is stewardship, living below your means. It's that simple. Why would God bless someone who's not going to be a good steward of it? If there are two people and one person continues to live above his means and another person who lives below his means, and he tithes and he's faithful and he's generous and he takes care of his family and he's unselfish, God has the power and the ability to bless us and to give us more resources. We talked about James Robinson. What a lot of people don't know about James, because I've been there. I've been to the countries, Angola, Mozambique, the countries. He's feeding about 500,000 children every month.
That's amazing.
I mean, years ago, I don't know what the statistic is now, the government told him he was responsible for saving 7 million lives. Well, what he's doing is putting his faith in action. Why wouldn't God bless James? Because God says, he's a good steward. When I give him resources, he's helping people with those resources. Well, that's what we've got to do in this country as well. We need to be generous, but we've got to live below our means as well. We've got to steward what God's given us.
Let's talk about that for a second here, because I believe that is our success as well. I think it's your success as well. We started around the same time. I don't know if you know this, but we started around 2000, each of us. And both of us are off-the-charts miracles if you look at us as business or in church size and what I've done. They don't happen. It's an aberration, complete aberration. I believe, in your case and mine, it's because we have tried to be good stewards, and we do good with our money. You know, tithing 10% is the beginning. That's required. Now, what are you doing on top of that? However, I know great people who tithe, are great stewards for their money, and it goes away. I mean, you know, something happens, they make a bad business decision, but life happens to them, and it goes away. So if you're going to say God wants to give it to good stewards, what happens to those people who have really done no wrong, but life happens, and it's gone?
Part of that is, again, the economy that our government has created. That we have a government right now that has created an economy, and you showed the scales, goes up and down and up and down, and it rains on the just and the unjust. Everyone gets affected. And again, blessings are not just financial. So I may be rich one day, quote unquote, and poor the next because of the economy that we're in, but I'm still blessed. I still have a wife that loves me, and I still have kids that are serving God, and I still have the health that God's given me, and I'm still able to help other people still.
Okay. Let me take you here. There's a new survey that is out, and this new survey says, and it's absolutely incredible to me, nearly half of church-going Americans, 46%, say church does not have any effect on their life. If church has no effect on your life, why the hell would I be at church?
I agree totally.
I mean, what a waste of time.
But I would rephrase the question just a little bit. Why would I be at that church? If that church is not affecting me, if they're not preaching the Word, teaching my children to love God, teaching my children the Word, if they're not affecting my life, then why would I go to that church? And there are a lot of churches that aren't. I will tell you this. We talked about the year 2000. I've got a lot of friends that began churches about the year 2000. And many of us fed up with church as usual, business as usual. And same way you, business as usual. And so we created, you were in the service, you've been in the services, a worship experience that encounters God, where people really get in touch with God and hear God's voice and commit their lives to God. And then to put the word, put the message where, you know, I was talking with some of your chief of staff who's saying, I've been thinking all week about the message I heard. It's changed me. I preached on intercession, you know. I talked about taking hold of God and taking hold of whoever we're praying for. He said, I've been thinking about it all week. There were probably 30 scriptures in that message that you just heard this last weekend. If we don't get people back to having an encounter with God and learning God's Word, then church isn't going to affect their lives at all.
You have to learn His Word and read His Word. But many churches are so timid, and it's almost like you're learning this stuff. Many churches are teaching God algebra. I've never used algebra in my life. I've never used calculus in my life. You know, I know a lot of people do. In my line of work, don't need it. Don't need it. Why would I sit there and learn that? They don't apply it. I remember asking one of my teachers, I think it was in 8th grade, and we started learning algebra. And I knew, I was already in radio, and I knew everything was going to be a multiple of 60. I knew that 56 meant 4 before the hour. That's all I need to know. You know what I mean? And I raised my hand. I said, why am I going to need any of this? Can you apply this to anything? He didn't. He couldn't. I don't remember anything of it. Churches, too many of them, are teaching the algebraic formulas of God and not telling me in real terms, how does this apply to politics, to my job, to picking a spouse, raising my children. They'll maybe coast on the family thing, but then that's it. Right? Wrong?
No. And see, let me just tell you, years ago, in my early 20s, and I don't say this a lot, but I'll say this right out to our church and let them know, because I want people to know I'm not perfect. In my early 20s, I had to get out of ministry to get my life right with my wife and my family. And so I'm traveling around doing youth things, but not living what I'm preaching. So I take a job. And during that time, while I'm working, I saw things totally different. All of a sudden, I'd go to church and think, now, how is that going to help me this week? And I even had one of my preacher buddies stop by, and he told me something, and he said to me, that'll preach. That's a little expression preachers use, that'll preach. And I said to him, yeah, but will it live? I said, I really don't care anymore if it'll preach. I want to know, will it live? And I think every minister, every pastor has got to ask himself that every week. How am I really helping people? Because Jesus helped people. Jesus was very, very practical. I mean, he'd say, you know, Don't go try to get a speck out of your brother's eye when you got a log in your own eye. Don't worry about tomorrow. Tomorrow has enough worry. God takes care of the flowers. He takes care of the grass. He'll take care of you. He was very practical.
Talk a little bit about, I heard you this weekend, and you talked a little bit about how if you're still carrying the worry, if you've prayed, and you walk out of your closet, so to speak, and you still have the worry, you haven't done anything but griped.
Yeah.
Can you explain that?
Yeah. Well, prayer really is connecting with God and giving God the burden that we have. And we're burdened for our family, we're burdened for our health, we're burdened for our job. And yet if we go in and just gripe at God because God didn't do anything, that's not prayer. Prayer is when we go in and we pray until we realize, I have given this worry, this burden to God. And I know that God is big enough to take care of this. That's what prayer really is.
When we come back, I want to go back to a little bit on 46% say it doesn't change their life. To those people who are sitting in a church where they love their church, their friends are there, but the pastor's just not telling them anything, how they should approach their pastor, their priest, or their rabbi. You know, what is the breaking point? Is there one? You know, how do you do that? And a little bit more on prayer and giving it up. And then what? Because you can say, I'm praying about the country, and I know God's big enough to solve it. But then what?
Yeah.
Then what? Back in a second. Back with Robert Morris. He is pastor here in Dallas, Texas, and the author of this book has been out for how many years?
9 years.
9 years. Been bestseller forever. The Blessed Life, a great book. I want to talk to you, let's go back to the 46% of Christians say they go to church, doesn't affect their life. There's another one here, 6 in 10 church attenders said, tell me about the last time you went where you had any significant insight in regards to your life. 6 in 10 couldn't remember anything.
Mm.
So you're sitting there, and all your friends are there, your family's gone there forever, you love it, but they're not helping, and they're not stepping, in your view, they're not stepping up to their responsibility. Help me talk to a preacher or a pastor or a priest. Help me do that, because a lot of people would be timid to say, you know, you have a responsibility here.
Yeah. Well, a couple of things. First of all, to the person, I would like to say that we have to feed ourselves too. We do go to church to be fed. Nearly every time you and I have had a conversation, you've told me where you're reading in the Bible and what God is saying to you. And so we have a responsibility to feed ourselves too. We kind of go to church many times and just kind of, you know, feed me. And we're like big
You know
babies.
what, I have to tell you, church to me is a hospital. It's a hospital.
Yeah.
I'm going in. All I need from my church is, I'm struggling just to make it to Sunday.
Mm-hmm.
I need you to give me just that extra little bit to get me to next Sunday.
Right.
Because it's a war zone.
Right. And I want to create a hunger in you to read the Word yourself. I want to create a hunger in you. So that's one thing, is to feed themselves. The other thing is, though, and I'm going to be pretty bold here, and that is that change churches. Now you can, I agree, make an appeal, talk to the pastor, things like that. Start a small group, start a Bible study yourself if you can do that. But if you can't, if there's no other option, then don't be afraid to go outside of your comfort zone and see, is there a Bible-believing, Spirit-filled church in my area? Is there a church that may be different? You know, the first time you came and you shared a little bit even at our church, and you said, you know, you guys are rocking, you know, and we lift our hands to the Lord. Well, that's not a charismatic or Pentecostal tradition. That actually is in the Bible. It's all through the Bible. Lift up your hands in the sanctuary and bless God. Mm-hmm. Think about when you go home tonight. When you go home, your children will probably lift their hands to you. Well, what's wrong with us lifting our hands to God? Nothing. Okay. So you might have to, though, go out of your comfort zone a little bit. It is that important, especially if you have children. It is that important to not continue to take them to a church that they're not getting anything out, and they can't wait until they grow up and are able to not go. They can't wait. And there are many, many, many good churches, but so many times we get locked into our tradition And
Yes.
well, I'm a Catholic, or I'm a this, or I'm a that. But I think it's that important. We need to find a good church.
I tell you, if you haven't found him on your own, if you haven't challenged, I mean, I was reading Carl Sagan, Demon Haunted World. Have you ever read that?
No.
And it's about how, it's about how the church is, made up these stories, and he's an atheist. And I was reading it, and it was about the Catholic Church. And I hadn't gone to Catholic Church in a long time. And it infuriated me. And I actually slammed that book down. And I thought to myself, wait a minute, why do I feel that way? What is it that I'm feeling here? And I thought, I've never really considered the atheist point of view. I'm going to start there. Because everything that I believe has been told to me by someone else.
Yeah.
I've been taught to believe. I've been taught even not to question.
Yeah.
That's not good.
No.
God wants us to find him and have a one-on-one, not through you, but me to him to me.
Yeah.
And we should feel comfortable, as Jefferson said, question with boldness even the very existence of God.
Absolutely.
Right. And I think once you do that, then you have a chance of really doing something powerful in your life. Because, look, people can say anything to me. I really think that I'm getting to the point, I hope and pray, that I'm to the point, or someday will be to the point, to where you put a gun to my head, go ahead. Go ahead, that's okay. That's all right. I'm sorry that that's who you are. And as a man, I may have fear of what Billy Graham said to me, I'm not afraid of death. It's just the whole dying part that scares me a bit. The dying part would scare me, but not death.
Yeah.
I know I'm to that point, not death. That's really liberating, really, really good and important. And that comes from asking the tough question. When it doesn't make sense to you, go in, zero in, and either reject it or learn it to where it's right in you.
Right.
Right?
I agree totally. I think that people, whether it's atheist, agnostic, believer, Mormon, Catholic, Jew, whatever, ask the questions.
Ask them.
Don't be afraid to ask the questions, because God is not intimidated.
No, he's like we're gonna outsmart him.
That's right.
Gotcha.
It is absolutely okay to ask those questions.
So we had a big discussion today. A woman called and said, "Who are you to judge Newt Gingrich?" And I said, "I'm not judging him. I'm not saying he's going to hell. I have very strong opinions on Newt Gingrich, based on his past, and I'm very big in pivot points. When somebody has a pivot point, not just one part of their life changes, a true pivot point, everything in their life changes. And they can tell you what the wallpaper looked like in the room when they had that, when they said, oh crap, I'm wrong and that's out of control, and everything, it all comes undone when you have a real true pivot point. Agree or disagree?
Absolutely.
Okay. So, and this woman said, you can't judge him. And I said, I'm not judging. I don't know his heart. I don't know his soul. I don't know where he stands with God. I'm not questioning him with God. Yeah. But I have a responsibility to judge him, to have discernment, to say, this guy, I think, is right or wrong because of these patterns in his life. And he may be great at the grocery store. He may be great in the college campus. But for this job, he's not great. Yeah. Right?
Well, every time you vote, is that judging someone?
Of course it is.
Yeah, absolutely. And every time you take your car to this mechanic rather than this mechanic, is that judging? Well, sure.
Yes.
It's judgment. It's making a good judgment, but it's not being judgmental. There's a totally different...
Explain the difference, because I hear this all the time. I'm not judging. Barack Obama may be the nicest guy in the world. I don't know. I don't know him. I'm judging him based on his policies and his actions. Right. And that's what I'm required to do.
Yeah, absolutely. Right? You are. See, when Jesus said, judge not, and you will not be judged, he follows it with, condemn not, and you will not be condemned. Forgive, and you will be forgiven. In other words, he's saying, don't be condemning toward other people. Don't condemn them. Don't be judgmental. Don't be critical. Be forgiving. We can be forgiving of people who fall, who make a mistake. We can be forgiving in our hearts. We can have love, but we still have to judge the principles
Right.
by which they live their life, especially if we're going to elect them to make principles by which we're going to live our lives.
Occupy Wall Street ends their things. We have 1 minute. Wow, I could go on forever with you. Occupy Wall Street ends their reports with, "We are legion. We do not forgive. We do not forget." First of all, we'll spend some time in the future on "We are legion," but we are commanded to forgive. But to forget is not a good idea, right?
We have to remember how our nation was founded. We also have to remember people who've taken our nation the wrong way, the mistakes that we've made, and learn from those mistakes. That's why we study history in the first place.
You have a remarkable ministry, and you have I see the fruits of your congregants. I see the people. I interact with the people that go to your church. It's a gigantic church, and you're a remarkable man and a remarkable church, Gateway.
Thank you.
So thank
you, Glenn. I feel the same with you. I've loved getting to know you and hearing your heart, and I am very, very grateful for what you're doing for our country.
Thank you. Likewise.